nous soutenir, cliquez sur la cloche. Pour les notifications, cliquez sur j'aime, abonnez-vous et partagez cette vidéo. Merci.
La matrice est un système, Néo. Et ce système est notre ennemi. Quand on est à l'intérieur, qu'est-ce qu'on voit partout? Des hommes d'affaires, des enseignants, des avocats, des charpentiers. C'est avec leur esprit qu'on communique pour essayer de les sauver. Mais en attendant, tous ces gens font quand même partie de ce système. Ce qui fait d'eux nos ennemis. Ce qu'il faut que tu comprennes, c'est que pour la plupart, ils ne sont pas prêts à se laisser débrancher. Bon nombre d'entre eux sont tellement inconscients et désespérément dépendants du système qu'ils vont jusqu'à se battre pour le protéger.
The Mike Flynn case. You decided to have a United States attorney, independent from Washington, independent from everything, by the name of Jensen, to take a look at this case, correct? Tell us a little bit about that process.
Well, that case had been going on. You know, I came in as Attorney General while it was still going on and after he had pled, I believe. But in any event, it was being challenged by his lawyer, and she filed a lot of motions and made a lot of allegations about the government's conduct and so forth, and raised some points.
Sidney Powell.
Yeah, Sidney Powell, and she also raised some points about whether he had effective assistance of counsel because of a conflict of interest and so forth. And I think everyone who knew anything about that case thought it was a bit hinky. The case was sort of hinky. It didn't all add up. Because the call on its face was a perfectly legitimate call for the incoming National Security Advisor to make. And so I asked the U.S. Attorney at that point, because of all these attacks by the Defense Counsel on the Department's handling of it, to take a look at it. And this is a man who was 10 years an FBI agent, 10 years as a career prosecutor in the Department, and a top lawyer in St. Louis, Missouri. And I asked him to take a look at it, and he did, and he found a lot of things that had not come to light before, had not been provided to Flynn or Flynn's lawyer, that showed, for example, that the FBI agents who interviewed, I mean, it showed it clearly that the FBI agents who interviewed Flynn did not think he was lying. Now, this was later minimized in testimony as suggesting, well, they meant he didn't break out into sweat and his eye pupils didn't contract. That's all they were saying. No, they were saying they didn't believe that he thought he was lying at the time. And, you know, various other facts like that about what the real purpose of the interview was, which looked to Jensen as if it was essentially held just to try to, it was untethered to any legitimate investigative purpose. Its sole purpose was to try to get him to lie. So based on those factors and the fact that I didn't think it met the standards of prosecution of the Department of Justice, I decided to drop the case.
It's interesting to me. How many civil liberties groups supported your decision? ACLU?
No, in fact, none of the defense groups that would normally be jumping up and down here, because one of the arguments being made is, you know, he shouldn't be able to withdraw his plea. Well, most defense lawyers in the country would say that's outrageous. But here, of course, they're silent. You know, this has to do with the rule of law. You know, the people, many of my critics are constantly spouting the term rule of law. They don't know what it means. I don't think they've ever really thought about it. But the rule of law means at its core that any rule you apply to one person, you have to be willing to, and in fact do, apply to the next and the next who is similarly situated. That's an important discipline that protects all of us, because it means anything the government's going to do to me, they're going to be willing to do to someone else in my position. And that means that rules generally, if you really believe that and think about it, it means that rules will be reasonably applied. And that didn't happen. And whenever I've intervened in a case, I don't consider it intervening. I'm the Attorney General, and people are exercising the power of the Attorney General. But whenever I'm supervising a case that I don't think is being handled fairly to the individual, because the individual is being singled out and treated differently, I'll stop that, because that's what the rule of law is all about, and that's what people are essentially complaining about.
Doesn't this get back to your broader point early on that, given the times and given what's happened to politics, that even a reasoned decision, one that's based on an independent United States attorney who is a seasoned, really, civil servant prosecutor, seasoned FBI agent, you take that, you apply it, you make a decision. I mean, what if you got all that information and you decided otherwise? Wouldn't that be peculiar?
Yes.
And so you stand up for the rule of law. One of the areas I also want to get into briefly is Russia collusion. And so we had this investigation going on, and you had another independent U.S. attorney who served in Republican and Democrat administrations by the name of Durham out of Connecticut. And he's conducting the investigation. I think would be helpful for Sylvia, my mother-in-law, and for the whole nation to understand when they say, why aren't we indicting somebody? Why aren't we indicting them today? Do you have the power to indict somebody today or in some kind of clock, or how does that work?
Well, you know, part of the rule of law, as far as I'm concerned, and one thing I want to get back to is not using the criminal justice system as a political tool. I think it has been in the past. I think the whole Russiagate thing was an instance of that. It's used as a weapon. And what I want to do is make it clear that we will indict people only when we are satisfied that the standards of the department have been met, which means that we believe a crime has been committed by this person and we have proof beyond a reasonable doubt to prove it.
To convict them.
To convict them. And we have to go to a grand jury, and the grand jury has to agree to get the indictment. And proof beyond a reasonable doubt is a high standard. And I think all political sides have gotten into the habit in this country of just sort of saying that their political opponents have done something terrible. They think it's terrible. You know, it's enough for me to conclude he's terrible. Why isn't he in prison?
Let me ask you this. So people, you have a grand jury. What's their job?
Their job is to make the decision, to return a bill of indictment.
You have the U.S. attorney. What's his job?
To present the evidence to the grand jury.
And so they basically will decide if somebody should or should not be indicted. And then you're more or less informed about it and have the final say.
Right.
So you're not the first tier of this. So when people say to you, when is so-and-so going to be indicted, you don't really have a clue until that is really teed up, do you?
That's right. I mean, you know, as you said, John Durham, 35-year veteran of the department, worked for both Republican and Democratic attorneys general on special projects because people have a great deal of confidence in his ability. And he's meticulous, and he is about gathering all the evidence. Now, people lose track of, you know, I think people have to realize that in this process, the witnesses have lawyers. Sometimes they won't talk to you. Sometimes
slows down.
They slow it down. Sometimes they will take the Fifth Amendment unless you give them immunity and so forth. Also, there was a sprawling number of issues to be looked at here, and there were a lot of different conspiracy theories. And part of our responsibility is to look at all of these things so we can assure people that these various theories have been looked at, and so this takes some time.
You think the public has a reason to be angry about, we'll call it the whole Russia collusion stuff, what took place now that we have more and more information coming out on the public record? Forget about probable cause. Public record. We now have testimony that was given by senior officials in the Obama administration to the Schiff committee that's come out, where not a single one of them believed there was Russia collusion. Mm-hmm. And all these other untoward things with the FISA court. Now we know about Comey conducting activity without telling the Attorney General of the United States. This was a really horrible thing, wasn't it?
Yes, to me it is sort of the doomsday scenario of abuse of government power, which is the party in power uses the police and intelligence services to tilt the field against their political opponents, and that's that's terrible from a governmental and civil rights standpoint. So, but the media was part of this, and that's to me probably the the worst aspect of it. The so-called watchdogs of the system, they became attack dogs. They weren't watchdogs. They had no critical, they didn't use any critical faculties. In fact, things that were clearly preposterous, they took hook, line, and sinker, and they fanned the flames of this worse than anybody else. They all got out on the limb. The limb's been sawed off, but you wouldn't know it. Because there's, they don't even say, whoops, we got that one wrong. They're on to the next conspiracy theory.
And they're not going to give their Pulitzers back either.
No.